Call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. First order of business would be our minutes from November 19th. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those? And does anybody have any changes? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Make a motion that be published.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in. All right, we have an agenda. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve that.
So moved.
Okay, second? Second. And all in favor?
Aye.
Approved. Thank you very much. Next order of business this is our first commission meeting of the year. And section 1501 of the zoning ordinance requires that although the city appoints all of the committee members, personification of Holly, it is the members of this commission that actually elect chairman. Therefore, I would like to entertain a motion to nominate somebody on this committee as the chairman.
I nominate Dan as the chairman.
Second. Thank you. Any other nominations? All in favor? Thank you, I think. All right.
I didn't say which Dan, by the way.
Only one I know of on this committee. Welcome, Mr. Phelps. Since this is our first meeting of the year, does everyone know everybody? Jim, do you know everybody here?
Hello, Jim.
Don Chibana.
Hello.
Yeah.
This Mr. Phelps over here has accepted this mission to be on the mission. So
It's impossible.
impossible mission, absolutely. All right, and to try and make it more impossible, the first discussion will be the current tree ordinance. It is on this agenda because the city in their dealing with tree cutting and so forth in the city has had some issues. And I would like, Jim, do you want to talk to this issue, or Jason, do you want to talk to the issue?
Jim, well, and Jim, I think you probably about more boots on the ground. Just to kind of summarize, Mr. Chairman. A lot of our premium lots are already built. With the topography of a lot of our lots that are being developed now. By the time you remove trees from the footprint, remove trees from the driveway, remove trees from the septic, remove more trees from the backup. And just the removing trees to grade and prep the site. We are seeing a tremendous amount of trees having been removed just to develop the park. And I know with some of our current restrictions, it kind of puts us in a situation where we're having to count percentages and things like that. So, Jim, you want to add that?
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Obviously, I'm very familiar with the tree ordinance. One of the problems we've had in the past, or I've had in the past, when I receive, or when the city hall, they bring the permit applications 99% of the time in the city hall. And then the clerical work is done on it as far as, do you have everything, the insurance, affidavit if one is needed, if the contractor doesn't have the insurance, so on and so forth. Then, once everything has been logged in, then it comes to me. And I go out, physically take a look. trees are supposed to be marked. In addition to that, a drawing, a photo of where exactly on the property the trees go. And therein lies one of the major problems that I've most recently over on Knob Drive, I think everybody. There was some trees cut down on some property that was not theirs. There were several causes, if you will, of how that happened. Back just before Easter week, I got the application for the trees to be cut. It was also, and it's in the current ordinance, down trees on property that does not belong to you. Having written permission, it doesn't say here, but we also have it notarized when it comes in. That was done. I had diagrams showing where the trees were, and with both homeowners. Well, everything was in order. I posted the permit, and then I went. My daughter was coming. She was in the hospital having a baby and had some complications. I spent a week out of town. I come back, and my first day on the job, coming back, I drove over to Knob, and I'm looking at. There were 2 permits issued. One down below Knob and then the other one up Knob. This is the trees that I approved. Now, I had moved forward in issuing the permits based in good faith on, okay, I have notarized, everything was in order, but then come to find out the trees that were cut were not the ones that were supposed to have been cut. And we've been dealing with that. And anyway, the point of that story was thanks to Jim Phelps, just this past Friday when we had the community appreciation, he introduced me to an app. Never heard of it. And since then, I've just signed up today for it. It's called Land Glide. And I may ask Jim in a minute, he probably knows much more about it than I do in the real estate business, and I've never used it. But basically, you can, it shows where you're standing. It shows the perimeter of the property, the parcel that you're on, and you can actually walk property, and it shows you exactly where you're at and where the property line is. And this is something that I think is going to be a very, very much value added app going forward. Had I had this prior, I could have walked this and said, no, this tree that you're showing me here is way out of bounds. And you want to elaborate a little bit more?
No, you got it. Everything up here is, nothing up here is law. It's just because it's all woods and there are no obvious lines in most cases, unless it's been recently surveyed. So I think, at least half Jim's back, being able to say, the line is here, you go over it and you've overstepped under any of these circumstances. You're not on your own land anymore. And so to the extent that that's the problem, that's how you go out and actually flag.
And that has been a major problem. That this particular instance I was talking about, this wouldn't have happened had I had known about this before. But again, in reviewing, and obviously it's open to discussion here after I finish explaining this, but looking at the current ordinance, I think we have everything in place that we need right now, other than what Jason was indicating regarding the cherry pick lots, historically have been taken. Now we've got the terrain that maybe the 25% threshold, you're not supposed to cut outside of the footprint of the property, 25% maximum. We may want to revisit that, just due to, again, the topography that we're looking at. But other than that, everything is in here. And if we adhere to this, which I fully intend to do, I think that we should be good going forward.
Okay, thank you. Wait, Jim, what is it? Land Glide?
Land.
Jim, what do you? Yeah, either. .com.
Not just Land Glide, belong to your app store.
Oh,
It's a cheaper one, $15 a month or.
I think it's $10 a month, or you can buy it for a year and you get it. From what I've seen, it should be worth its weight in gold.
I would think. I'd never heard of it. Before I speak, anybody else have any Any comments?
Well, my impression is the ordinance itself seemed very good. I don't think that a whole lot needs to be done to it, but maybe a little tweaking with regard to some of those situations that we talked about. I think we're all in agreement that we want to preserve the natural beauty of the Sky Valley, and anything we can do to do that, that's great, but the ordinance reading it, it makes a lot of sense, and I think if it was enforced the way it should be, that we shouldn't have any problems. So anything we can do to help you enforce it. I think we need to.
I've taken, folks at their, face value and word, and there's been a few instances where probably should have drilled a little bit deeper, but now, in fact, for instance, I've got one right now over on, Moon Ridge. There's a guy in Ridgeview up above Moon Ridge, just before you go into Thomas Knob. He's still in Sky Valley, and he wants to cut trees on 2 properties that are not his, and I've gotten signed notarized affidavits from both of those homeowners, but that wasn't good enough after what's happened in this other case. This has been sitting in my office for over a month. And, this guy, the homeowner that wants all this work done is an attorney, and he's making sure that all of his T's are crossed and I's dotted. But on top of that, he had an arborist who, I'm glad that I met this arborist coming up from Gainesville, from Athens. And I walked all the property with the arborist, and he was extremely thorough, pointing out each tree, and he gave it a category of good, fair, not so fair, poor. But I'm still waiting to make sure that exactly, well, now that I've got land glide, because I met with him before land glide. I'll be able to go back up to that property now and look at all these trees marked and walk it with the land glide, and I could know exactly if this is the case. So, just wanted to bring that up.
Okay.
Are we assuming for ourselves the liability of declaring that this tree is on the?
That's a legal question, I don't know.
I think if the property owner is gonna question it, then he's certainly the right to get a surveyor up there and determine that it's on his property.
I mean, the land glide is pretty accurate, obviously it's not accurate to the survey. So if there's a tree that's close to a line, then,
Now, that being said, the scenario that Jim just brought up, where he's got notarized letters from the neighbors. If the neighbor's willing to have that tree cut, and you're willing to have that tree cut, it doesn't matter which side of the line it's on.
that would not be my question. Homeowner design. And Jim says, okay, cut it, it's fine. Later on, discover that it's on somebody else's property. Whose responsibility is if we gave him a permit?
You're thinking that it was on his.
The permit is also the problem. But if we gave him a permit, that sort of muddies the water.
The only way that I can see around that, other than land glide, which Jim Phelps just mentioned, is not perfect. Is to say, I need a survey, site plan showing exactly where this tree is. If we start requesting every homeowner in Sky Valley to cut a tree, have to have a survey, that could bring up another.
Maybe you put a clause in the permit that says, as he fills it out, I certify that he's treated on my. That puts all the burden on him.
I can see that. There's a question. Jan,
Well,
excuse me, would you please stand and identify yourself? And your address?
I am GMA's. I just heard you talking about percentages and so forth, and maybe tweaking the ordinance. Is there not a process whereby if I want to cut 30%, saying it's 20%, that I can come and ask? Rather than go through the whole appeal process, is there not a way that can be handled? I know how hard we work on this ordinance. and start changing.
Actually, we didn't work on this ordinance. The one that we all worked on, all those years. all that went through. Yeah,
But the way that this is written, there is no exception, it says 25%.
There's no exceptions, there's no appeals.
so, but there is an appeal process. Any applicant dissatisfied with the recommendation of the city marshal, building inspector, or the decision by the city manager may appeal such recommendation to or decision to the city council.
But that has to do with specific trees. The ordinance, 25% is 25%. Unless we go out and count each tree and
Right. Well, we thinking that when you're 30 or 32, or, I mean, how are you gonna decide
Well,
that?
yeah, first off, I don't think anybody's gonna go out there with a calculator and start determining what, whether there's 25% already cleared or it's 21 or, it's,
some of the terrain
it's gonna be somewhat subjective,
Oh, well.
just based on the facts on the ground, it's gonna have to be somewhat subjective.
I just thought it's easier than to change a whole ordinance.
Yeah, and I kind of disagree with here in one respect where the appeal isn't necessarily just for one tree. It just says any applicant dissatisfied with the recommendation of the marshal or the city manager.
Oh, I can see that.
I mean, that seems so much easier.
If you've got a legitimate reason for wanting more clearing done, you can certainly go to city council and say, I would like to do more and this is why.
I mean, that's so much easier than trying to make a young decision.
Now, I had one thing that I thought about when we were talking about this, and it gets back to clearing somebody else's land. The way the ordinance is written right now says cutting, topping, trimming, or removing trees on another person's land will require a signed written permission from that landowner to be sent to City Hall before a permit will be issued, period. My thinking is that we have a 25% clearing requirement, that this particular clause should state that as long as, as long as the clearing on that other person's land doesn't exceed the 25%. You following that?
Yeah, can I,
Please do.
I think the whole thing needs to be tightened to beginning to end. Just little things, and forgive me for being too particular. Is there such a thing as a city marshal?
You're sitting next to
But are you the officials?
I'm the official city marshal.
And
Semantics.
well, but it gets down to
But
that.
yeah.
Here's an effect. City marshal.
city marshal / building inspector.
Okay. That's kind of legitimate. All right, on section 6 prohibition. I don't, we're saying we've got a hard and fast rule, but we really don't. In no instance will more than 25% of the food remaining outside of the footprint and put drainage, defined early. No more than 25%, but shall be cut and removed unless. Okay, so you just negated what you just said. Approved by the city council and conditioned upon an approved landscape plan prepared by the landscape.
I don't think I did negate that because that city council approval can come in the form of addressing a field.
Well, what I'm saying, though, Diane, is that we have a hard effect, but you can't cut more than 25%, period. That ought to be the way it reads. Because when you say, okay, unless it's approved according to a plan, well, that's so discretionary, you essentially, you have no standard. Yeah. To me, that's just the way I read it. It's, why say anything? Why say 20, why say 10%? Why say 100? Unless approved by a plan, or you really don't have a standard. Now, you negated it by saying unless you approve it according to a plan. Well, what's the plan going to show that's going to allow you to say, okay, well, you can do more than. You can do 100%.
Well, but-
if you wanted to do more than Jim thought was 25%, you would a landscape architect, or somebody else give them, and the council would have to. So
I understand, it just seems to me that you've essentially negated because somebody's gonna come up here. And say, I spent this money on landscape, and then you fellas still can't cut it. You know, it's just gonna make it harder on Jim, it's gonna make it harder on this body, on the council, everybody, because we're back on them, total discretion. Just based on some.
The appeal
plan.
process alone does.
It does, but if you had a hard and fast rule, 25% no more, then there wouldn't be any appeal. There's no description. I'm not being, I don't have to figure out a way to get the gray matter out of this. Because it's full of.
I don't think any ordinance that lacks an appeal process is a good ordinance.
I'm not suggesting, well,
You're just objecting to the in no instance.
I'm objecting to the unless approved by. It just doesn't. You get into variances and you know, you wind up having no real way to enforce it. You've got folks coming to you at hand. And I want to do this, well, okay. But if you do one, you're going to do it. There's no standard. I know you disagree, and I'm just stating, I'm trying to get a way to just put a handle on it and just fix it.
Suppose you said, unless a variance issued by the city council to cut more than 25%, you can't cut more.
But upon what criteria would the council decide?
Well, I think we you know, I mean, it sort of just gives us the right to say yea or nay based on what we think. But you have to have that yea or nay prior to shutting one. Right, I don't know, that's 25%, just get Jim approved. Got more than 25%, you can.
How about if it says, unless approved by the appeal process? By way of the appeals process. As outlined in section, whatever it is. Counselor, do you want to weigh in on this?
Well, I see Jim's point, but I agree that I think you have to have a way to alter this, and the way to do it is by the appeal process through to the city council. And so I like your language. I think that's fine to change it that way, to be specific about an appeal through to the council.
Would you agree with that? No, I love them.
I just,
I don't think.
Does the council want to see that? Because if you find at every meeting you've got these requests, then obviously that 25% is not working. So,
Yeah, then you go.
so I guess you say that's just.
the appeals process is in the language now.
But on like a very, if you, I had to replace flags where every time they come around, the council's getting requested the same variance over and over and over again. And you have to look at, maybe something's not working in the ordinance. I'm just thinking out loud that if you do start seeing these same requests 6-7 times a year, then we probably need to go back and look at that 25%. That's just all I want to know.
Okay, Jan?
Yeah, then you do it. You don't do it again. You may not get any. You might get one a year.
So there may be.
We're not getting them now.
Mr. Chairman, that we think it's working now, if we do see these requests coming very frequently, we may want to look at it.
There's an instance right now on Upper Ridge Pole. Over the last 15 years, I've counted the number of permits long before my time. Over 52 trees have been cut down on an individual's property. There are several lots involved, so I know it sounds like a lot of trees, it is a lot of trees. And I basically told the homeowner that, you know, from going forward, we need to be very, very strict on adhering to, you know, any other trees to be cut down, dead, deceased, or extenuating circumstances, you know, attached to the property. But having said that, the only other instance I've really encountered the 25% issue has been in new home construction. And I think all of you have seen down on Evergreen, chamber of trees were cut. And again, this 25% is outside of the footprint of. So you've got to remember, when you're looking at all the trees being cleared, another one was, case was on Alpine. When you take into account the footprint of the house, which has to be a minimum of 1,100 square feet on the grade level. And then outside of that, you've got the septic tank and drain field, the driveway. It's easy to see, wow, they're over the 25%, but are they really? And it's a tough call. So I like the 25% rule. Jim, as far as the way it's written, but again, you know, legal counsel, if we need to change it, so be it. But I don't think it's been an issue, at least in my experience thus far, other than the one I mentioned, and then new construction, which I just got a new application on Friday, so didn't even written it up yet, over on Cedar Lane. So I mean, there's going to be more and more. We all know the development's coming fast and furious, and so that's where we're going to take a look at the 25%.
So Jim, you don't feel like or next to the fire chief's house?
Yes.
Just use it, it's not particularly, but just to use that as an example. Did that apply with this whole regime?
You know, I'd say it's a real close call, because Jason and I both went out there. We went down on Sheep's Cliff, where originally the home builder is going to have the driveway, and then they realized just through the configuration, they needed to have it up on Evergreen. So that's a tough call. And I'd say it's really subjective, because again, we weren't able to get down and count every single tree before and after.
Right, yeah, so there's no way to enforce. There's simply no way. That's what I'm saying. It's just, I don't know, you can't write that into an ordinance, but it's a practical matter. Unless you go out and mark each tree and dare to take it off. Yeah. And there's no way to enforce it. And then if they violate it, which say that they're gonna be fined. No, up to section 9A, not to exceed $1,000 per violation. And $1,000 for each additional violation. That's redundant, but nonetheless, not to exceed. Well, what is it? Is it 1,000 or not? Not to exceed.
When you get
and
into,
who's going to
when you get into finding, like citing somebody and finding them, that can go as far as the judge. And he's the one that will determine.
the municipal judge?
Municipal judge.
I would say if you're gonna find $1,000, say a fine. Period. Again, not trying to be hard, but if they violate it, fine. It kind of gets back to my thing, you know, the other thing about. Unless approved, it's just so much gray area, and you wind up having no practical way for Jim to enforce. But it's just little things like that this thing needs to be cleaned up, but. To me, if we're gonna have it, it needs to be enforceable, meaning concise, precise, specific, and enforced. That is.
That's the issue. This thing could look like the Atlanta poll book. And if it's not being enforced, it won't matter what it says. Getting back to the new construction, I do think as far as,
And you open it up for public comments.
happy to do that. When it comes to new construction and builders that are exceeding their permit or just flat out not gotten permits for something, we have a perfect amount of clout. We just don't issue the CO.
Mhm.
That enforcement is gonna get their attention every time.
Of course, and once they cut the tree, it's cut.
But there are remedies in here as to what they have to replace. And that replacement is gonna have to happen before the CO is issued.
And $1,000 per violation.
And
Which would be $50,000.
so again, enforcement is up to us. Doesn't matter what we write in this ordinance. If we're not enforcing it, it isn't gonna matter.
Mhm.
Mr. Chairman, I think the most equitable way to do this would be, we just require a tree plan by a landscape architect. So they need to show what percentage of trees we have now, and the footprint, the septic, and they need to show what is going to be left. I think that's gonna be the only way we're gonna be able.
It's gonna get expensive.
Well, it's expensive to build, period. We've had these conversations with builders in the past, they want to balk at a corporate square foot, $5,000 per building permit. They're building a $900,000 house. If that's gonna keep them from building, they're gonna spend another $1,500 on a tree plan. Can they really afford the $900,000 house to build? So, everything costs more, it's the way that. I know, early in my career, I spent 4 years in Hall County, and we required a free plan for every permit. And the burden was on that builder to show that once everything was removed, that they're gonna meet that minimum. They keep landscape architects, but, plus the burden goes back to the property owner, and we've got if an issue arises, you've got a stamp plan, or you've got somebody like the that has got their state seal that they're putting online to say it's correct. Other than that, I don't know how else to do this.
Okay,
Good point.
anybody else up here?
There's another small thing on section 9E. I think that whole thing, this 9E is deleted, and you read it. It says the city marshal, which I now understand is Jim, determines that a proper, that the required permit was not obtained, or that more trees were included in the approved permit. Well, in other words, if they violated, what that means, if they didn't do it, they didn't obtain it, or they cut more trees as they obtained permission. The city manager property will be notified. And if they both agree if proper procedures would have been followed, the application would have been approved. Well, of course, if proper procedures had been followed, it would have been perfect. The property owner, listen to this, property owner shall pay a penalty to the city equal to double the normal permit. The total number of trees are in property top. Well, is that in lieu of or in addition to $1,000 per violation? I don't understand why that's even in them. It negates, confuses the issue. Simply describing a violation. That's already describing, now that.
I think that's there because it's consistent with all building permits. Am I correct, Jason, that, if I build a deck, Sam's getting the permit, I'm gonna still have to get the permit retroactively and pay double the permit fee.
So that would be in addition to the $1,000 per violation. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, I think we ought to insert that in addition to
we can do that.
whatever, because it seems to me that saying that is, but then just simply twice, but it's not.
I think a fee schedule. If you do the work.
It does.
I'm just suggesting that this is consistent with the fee schedule and the permit, other permit penalties and so forth, but okay. Anyone else? Debbie?
Debbie Dalhouse, 92 Demarest Lane. Several years ago, the city inspector slash city marshal at the time asked city council and the planning and zoning commission to revisit the tree ordinance because it was so confusing and unspecific that he felt he needed the guidance to be able to enforce it. A lot of work went into developing a draft plan that got to the draft stage in 2017. That was much more specific. In looking at the current law ordinance, the one we had in 2020, it's still just as confusing. I wholeheartedly agree with what Jim Phelps is saying. It's contradictory, it's not clear. And there is one section in there, section 12-195, that says no clear cutting and identifies trees and native shrubs, the rhododendrons, the mountain laurels, and other. Well, Jim Pyburn has cited 3 egregious examples where, by any definition, other than they did leave a few token trees, those lots were clear cut. And what are you gonna do about it? You can't put trees back. So I'm appealing to this group to make Jim Pyburn's job easier and make it very clear to people. Dude, this is a mountain community. You are moving into a mountain forest. That's why people move here. If you want your yard to look like an Atlanta suburb, stay in Atlanta. Do not try to make us look like Atlanta or Florida. That's not what we do. Thank you very much.
And I will submit to you that there is an ordinance 14-06, which states section 1, or section, well, here it is. Section 7A, paragraph 2, clear cutting and removal of native vegetation shall be prohibited except that. So that has been.
That's that. And people are doing it, and there is nothing we can do. You can say replant the trees. Well, in the case of one lot, the owner did plant trees. He planted sticks that are 2 inches in diameter at breast height. What he took out was 30 inches at breast height.
This addresses what has to be replaced. Replanted. No shorter than 10 feet high, measured from the top of the ball to the tip. No less than 2 inches in diameter.
When you take a tree and you replace it with a 2-inch tree, it ain't the same.
No, I agree, it's not the same, but it's, first of all, nobody's gonna come and replace a 30-inch tree.
Don't take it out.
I'd like to see him not take it out. But when somebody's gonna do something in violation of the ordinance, what are you gonna do?
Find them.
We've got that.
It's not being enforced.
That's not the issue.
Yeah,
This, again, I'll tell you, same thing I said before, this looks like the Atlanta phone book and has every law and ordinance in it that you could ever think of. If it's not being enforced or people are just ignoring it, then it won't matter when it's in.
heavy citations are being issued. But the new bill, those two that we just talked about, they were not, as I mentioned earlier, because it was very subjective, number of trees. Again, the one that I'm holding right now, even though it's not a new bill, the arborist has come in, now that I've got this land glide. It's gonna be much more intensive as far as me going out and examining it's gonna add a lot more time to what I have to put into it. But this is the 8th year in a row designated a tree city. So I mean, it should be very common knowledge. We want to protect our trees.
Thank you.
And
We're not paying the fines, and if so, could we issue them, then what happens to them? Do they go to jail?
To date, that I have not issued that many tree citations, but because of what's happened in the recent past, I'm going to be adhering strictly to the ordinance and any changes that we have going forward. Ultimately, I think it was Dan that said it's up to the judge, but we make the suggestion. The judge takes it from there, and he usually leans toward the staff's input. So the law is on our side.
It's life, they move and then they wanna change it to the way we're thinking.
Unfortunately, it's a very few, but there is a few that have the mindset of ask for forgiveness after the fact. And those are the ones that, I mean, not real often, but occasionally, someone will come in with a tree permit. I don't even know anything about it. Once I take a look at the paperwork, I go up and ready to post the permit. You've got trucks up there, a gang, chainsaws. Wait a minute, guys. I'll hold the phone. And again, that doesn't happen real often, but it does happen. Not just on trees, on a lot of, I just had to find somebody last week, double, which is not that punitive, for putting a roof on the day before that nobody knew anything about. So more and more people are starting to understand that we do have ordinances. And especially if they're coming from a big city, they know about it. But when you go into the county, it's the Wild West. So some people coming up from the county, they don't know. Ignorance is no excuse, as they say, but it does happen.
Well, thank you, I appreciate it, because I think once you people start getting big fines, we'll get it.
yeah, enforcement is the biggest issue.
And you only have one person, and trees are not his only job.
But word will get out. Somebody pays hefty fines, word will get.
Okay, anyone else have anything? All right. We've had a couple of suggestions as to how to tweak this one. Does anybody have the desire to put that into the form of a motion to make those changes, or is it your desire to have more discussion?
This is just a motion to make changes.
We have to have 2 readings.
If we would have that.
But we would have to have finished product.
2 readings before we approve it.
Mhm. And then it has to go to the city and the council has to.
Mr. Chairman, I just, could use issues, I know some cities and towns that have tree ordinances. To encourage those larger trees to remain, they have a credit. You can, a tree unit, where a tree this big might be a half of a unit. Tree that's 30 inches around might be 15 units. And we don't want to turn into an ordinance this thick. I do know that you got games with Paul County. They have a credit program that incentivizes folks to keep those trees. Yeah,
How does that credit program work? If you take out a 30-inch tree, you've got to replace it with a certain number of
you
units.
have to replace it with 32-inch trees. If
Okay.
they're half inch each. Yeah, that's.
I'm certainly not opposed to that kind of plan. Can you get a copy of that? Okay. In the meanwhile, we have a couple of suggestions to go into this thing now, and again, as everybody's saying, we have to come up with some language, put it in here. Have a finished product, have 2 readings. Then it has to be, then if we approve it, then it has to go to the city council, and they have to also have 2 readings. So, it's not a done deal today, but it's a good time to get started. So, does anybody have a motion? Nobody? Nothing?
Excuse me, as far as making a motion, both Jim and I were a little dubious about in no instance, so I think perhaps one of the others here, if we want to revisit that. In no instance more than 25%. I think that of all the discussion we've had, that was the one that got the most airtime. We need to clarify that because it says in no instance, but then down below it's a unless.
Okay,
So clean that up.
would you like to state how you would like that worded?
I don't, like I said, I was a little on the fence on whether it needed to be reworded. I was the one that brought up in no instance, so I think maybe it should come from someone else.
Well, you're the one that's got the idea, so.
You could say in no instance except unless otherwise provided for herein.
Resident lawyer sounds good to me.
You're making the motion.
I didn't make a motion, but I
It hasn't been a motion yet.
I'm just talking.
This was more discussion.
But that would be a clarification to refer to the other section, which,
Well, that's 193 prohibition.
yeah.
All right. Are you gonna form that as a motion or?
If, Jim, you think that's helpful, is that something you would? Both of you.
Well, I mean, you're saying unless provided for, herein, is that what you're saying? John?
That's just a simple way
Well, I
to,
mean, what would be that, what would that be referenced? What would otherwise be provided in here that would allow more than 25%?
well, the appeal process whereby you could appeal to the city council and so forth to a change in that.
Yeah, what I had suggested when we got into that initially was that unless approved by the city council as per the appeal process, you could go back and cite it's outlined in section section 5A.
You know, one thing that could be done would be, I'm just throwing this out, just put a period after remove. No instance shall 25% be removed, period. Okay, but have a, I need to open this can of worms, to have a variant procedure, much like zoning, you know, where you say you can't put a wiki store in a residential area if somebody applies for variance. That's not an appeal. Because it's not an appeal, because there's no decision been made, it's in order, you can't do. But that would be more variance, I think, than it would be an appeal. I'm sorry for being so technical.
I was thinking along the same lines, would not, when someone would appeal a decision, okay, about a tree, come to the council, I guess. And if the council agreed to do that, would that
It would essentially be in there. be more.
Right, so what we could say is without,
For this commission.
right, but ultimately through the, correct?
Yes.
So if you add language that said without an approved variance. No, in no instance before the 25%.
Well, you wouldn't even have to say that. You could just say no more than will be here. And then you have to say. So you define how you apply. If somebody wanted to go over
Through that,
project. And you, of course, have to be added to, you have to go and take essentially what be in the zoning orders, yes,
Mhm.
you know, and lay it over into this, so that you have a separate process for this tree ordinance. And again, that's a can of worms, but more technically consistent and more.
Okay.
So that's really what it would be a variance on.
So going back, Jim, Phelps, to what you were saying earlier. In no instance will more than 25% of the trees remaining outside of the footprint be moved, period. What about the rest of that? Sentence, just, or paragraph, leave that out.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I don't think anybody disagrees with that, and that's okay.
I agree.
It just gives you a standard that is definable and enforced,
And then have,
no subjectivity. So,
All right, well, I would keep that last sentence.
yeah.
see it again.
Well,
But again, that applies to you.
but Dan, you're saying, you're talking about the certificate of occupancy.
Mhm.
Well, if you ended the previous sentence with remove, then there's no consideration of it. It's simply say you can't do it. So,
Mr. Chairman, does it say anywhere in this ordinance how the 25% is calculated? I think
No.
that's the issue.
No,
No, it doesn't.
And you can simply say 25% minus
Yeah.
10, but if you don't have a, it shows how you come up with that rationale.
That's what I was saying.
That's where the landscape order, landscape plan comes in.
You know, that's the only way to really do that.
well, under section 4. One, whatever. The application should identify by location on the plan sketch, each tree to be cut, blah, blah, blah. Identify, in order to identify the tree, you gotta mark tree. So technically, they ought to be marking every tree. That's not the page. It's on the third page, top of the page. So it's
I'm missing a page here.
and as it's a practical matter, it's supposed to be marked. Well, that's made on the plan. This tree is to be, so, you know, it's, and you gotta mark every tree. Yeah, that you're gonna take out. So,
Mark every tree, both on the tree and on the plan.
Which is what I'm getting at.
but the plan they're discussing here is just simply a plan, or is it a landscape architect's plan, or is it just the owner's sketch or plan? I think that's what it's.
Well, historically, it's, the owner could come up with, if they've got their own site plan. They're just identifying the trees for the purpose of Jim being able to do his job. They're supposed to be marking them with ribbon or what have you on the ground, and then also going them on the plan or drawing.
in order for it to be mathematically, correct, you have to know the total number of trees to calculate the 25%,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
So they have to go on their property and count all their trees.
Mhm.
and what size?
Yeah, only those 20 inches is covered, and what 3 feet from the ground.
Yeah, that's defined under section 1A1 tree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any tree, and by the way, there's a typo there, 25 inches or more, not a base. In circumference. But that's how they define tree, anything exceeding 8 inches in diameter or 25
And
inches
you're right.
or more in circumference.
That's it.
And that's, what's pi is 3.14, so 3.14 times 8 is 25.14 or something, so rounding it down to 25 inches. So that's how that, but you're right, you have to go through and mark every tree. Count every tree. Mark the ones you want to take down. Dare not to cut another.
On forfeit of life, or
$1,000 imposed by lien on property.
All right, I think there's several changes here, and Jason's come up with something he's gonna find for us from another city. So why don't we table this? Those of you who have suggestions as to the rewording of some of these things, write them down and we'll bring them up at the next meeting. Hopefully be able to address them. That work for everyone? Okay, any other comments? Hearing none, let's move along. An issue that's going to start coming up, hasn't already, is that of solar panels or solar arrays. And I kind of touched on some suggestions as to what the problems might be when I sent out the notice of the meeting. City's gonna get requests, people are gonna want to put solar panels on their roofs. They might want to put a solar array out in the yard or something like that. State of Georgia is very pro solar power. They're not going to allow us to deny the right. Nor do I think we want to, but we can control it. So there's certain things that I think we need to start considering for a solar ordinance. Part of which could go in this tree ordinance, for example. Somebody comes and wants to apply for a permit to do a standalone solar array in their yard. Are we going to allow clearing of part of that yard to enable a solar array to work? My thinking is no. But do we want a solar array either on the roof or in the front yard, on the front side of the house, street side of the house?
They tried it flopped. Is that one?
No, it's. No, I just moved the sign.
Work today?
It is.
Okay.
Normally in here.
Well, that's why I was questioning it. I didn't really look with it. This is a very hilly terrain here in Sky Valley. Jim lives above me. I decide I want solar panels on my roof and it does nothing but create glare off my solar panel into Jim's front yard. Isn't that something that maybe should be controlled? Anybody else have any thoughts?
I think what you indicated as far as back of the house, front of the house, on the roof, I think that might need to be taken on a case by case basis, because obviously the way the homes are situated, which direction they're facing, is gonna have some bearing on that. But absolutely, it's just like metal roofs. We have to have something in place so that it's not blinding on certain hours of the day. And the same thing with movable panels, they put them on, oh, that looks great, then they tilt them. And it's shining right into your living room or. So we need to take a look at that.
Not ever seen movable panels on a roof.
They have, yeah, there's, they've got, it's mechanical and depending upon the sun move, they move. Let's go down.
Okay,
Aesthetically, I would not like to see standalone solar panels in people's front yards. People drive by, I just don't think aesthetically. That's one thing.
We located that sort of thing.
Yes, we can manage.
Say, you can do it on, but you can do. Independent. What,
can you even do that?
yeah, was my question.
If you know, if your house is down here and your front road, of course, is down here. But so this is the front of your house, yeah, you can probably control it there. But if, for example, your road is down here, your house is up here, all those monster steep driveways, and there's another road back here. Is it more visible on the backside of this? Yeah, it's a conundrum, and you know, I think we need to address something, or the city's not going to know how to address any of these permitting issues.
And
Requests.
there is a Georgia model solar ordinance that I think we should take a look at. And it's very
We have
complicated.
had our attorney looking for any approval. Georgia has come up with at least 3 potential ordinances that I have, none of which have been approved.
I don't know if this is true or not, but it's very complicated. I've looked it over.
Yeah.
It's very detailed and very complicated. Engineer needs to look at it if they're going to adopt it, but,
Where'd you find that?
I found it online, but it was, I think you can just look up Georgia model solar ordinance and I think it'll come up.
I looked, as I say, I found at least 3 of them that were proposed, but never passed. I don't think we're gonna come up with an answer here today, because there are just too many variables. But we need to really think about how we're gonna address it, because the city's gonna have some guidance. And with all the building that's going on around here right now, it's gonna come up more and more.
There are some sort of. And never noticed, you know, it's not something that is objectionable. You know, a black square on the roof. You know, I don't see a giant problem with. Or in the driveway work. But hey, it's not that.
Okay,
Maybe if Jim and Jason could come up with some issues that we might need to address along these lines. And send them out to us and let us give some consideration to them, and then in the next meeting, we could.
you had applications for permits for solar? Thus far?
Just one thing that comes to mind, is one way you can try to regulate, I know west, where you have a lot of the windmills with they have setbacks, they have an issue called solar, shadow, where when those turbine blades are spinning, and it's between the sun, it creates strobe effect, which can be probably as more annoying than it would be. But I would think probably just orientation, trying to look at orientation, where to go. Obviously, if you got a house, roof line, and the sun's coming in, depending upon how their house is oriented in relation to where the sun hits it. You know, they may say that the power is still on this side of the roof. Even though.
Typically, they want them over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not everybody's house will be oriented to be the most effective way to meet the intent of the ordinance, so, we can look through it, but and we're not the only municipality that's looking at these things as well. And we'll see what we come up with.
Lots of luck. You know, I've been looking at this and I don't know, there's just so many variables.
We do have the books of nuisance ordinances. Obviously, anything that's gonna infringe on your neighbor's property and well-being has to be addressed, and this could be.
Well, and maybe that's where it needs to be addressed, is in the nuisance. Debbie?
Could you at least say no on-ground panels, any panels have to be on the roof? That cuts out the worst of the offenses, I would think. And then you can refine it however. you
We
want.
could say that, yes.
The beginning.
Yeah.
And there's a possibility that we could have an application with some of these new builds. I'm not saying we will, but there's a possibility before we can get something on the books,
So I
so.
can almost guarantee we will. Some of these new modern houses that are going up, they're gonna want all the people. Yeah. To build them into the house, whether it be solar arrays or a lot of other modern features that aren't gonna necessarily affect us. But, yeah, you know, it's almost a guarantee that it's gonna come up. Which is why I'm looking at this. All right, keep thinking. I was just a judge on again. Yeah, we don't. All right, we'll move on. Item number 6 is consideration of an ordinance prohibiting the use of unconventional building materials and or methods. The county was looking at this. Did they, I don't think they ever got anything passed, did they?
But they are, I think they hired a company to come and present ideas for how to write that up.
Did they put a moratorium or is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Temporary moratorium. Yeah.
It's one thing council could do that. So we could come up with something.
We have something, you know, we adhere to the international building. So there are issues that are addressed in the code as far as, you know, what you can do with electric and so forth. I don't know that it addresses things like if somebody decides they want to build a yurt on a platform, soft-sided structure like that. I'm not so sure that the International Building Code addresses that. I do not think they do. We do have size restrictions under single family zoning designation, whereas they can't build something that's under 1,750 square feet.
Does our current building ordinance say anything about container homes or
It does not.
yurts or underground homes or whatever?
It does not. Container homes is a good example, you know, something goes, container is like 45 by 8. So if you put, you know, 5 of those together in some configuration, you probably 1,750 square feet.
Isn't there a roof requirement in our current building code?
Only that it has to have a roof.
It doesn't have, and it doesn't say.
Well, depending upon the material, the pitch,
The pitch
there are
is not-
restrictions on the pitch.
Yeah, there are. Well, you know, presumably a container home would have a flat roof. We already have flat roofs. So,
We do.
yeah, there's no prohibition against it.
It can't be more than 40 feet high. And we've already mentioned 1,100 feet on the base, on the grade level.
Minimum 1,100.
Right. Even in a, you have to see that, so you can't be up top.
Does it say anything about materials? to be used or not to be used in.
Our ordinance does not, but again, we revert back to the International Building Code potential. I haven't actually, that's a voluminous thing.
Yeah.
Have I read through it all? No.
I'm in the process, it's changing to keep up with
The changes every year. Or every other year or something. So.
I just had a thought, Mr. Chairman, years ago, there was a trend in all counties in North Georgia were doing away with single wide. And you find that if this county didn't address the issue, that became a dumping ground for all other counties that changed the rules.
Mhm.
The court said, you can't outlaw, but within the did was. Any structure that's being permitted in the city of this county has to have a minimum roof pitch with a minimum width. Single wide could meet that requirement, therefore they defaulted themselves and allow. If a container is 8 feet wide, we could go in and say something that any structure has to be a minimum of a certain width. If a container does not meet that. Because in a sense, they're almost configured like a single wide home.
They have to be able to go down.
So, if we had a minimum of 16 foot wide. Something to that effect. Unless they're gonna take 8 cut along, and they'll do together, make 16 or something, but
One of the thoughts I had was that we prohibit the use of any. I don't know. I want to-
Non-traditional.
Well,
Material.
no, I was thinking, anything, prohibit the use of anything that was originally constructed for a purpose other than residential habitation. That lets out airplanes, containers, so forth. All you have to do is watch DIY television, and you'll see what people do come up. The tree houses of camped earth construction and I think some of that is probably addressed in you. Finding it as another issue.
But as far as the material, it's really something we need to look at. Right now, we currently have on the books ordinance regulating the roofs as far as, the colors. But you can paint your house any color you want, hot pink, lime green. So we need to look at that whole and take a look.
I wasn't part of it. You know that at one point. City of Scott. Paint controls or color controls. It failed miserably.
And it's what, in its enforcement or?
And just. It got stuck.
Contentious issue.
The people didn't want the city telling them what they could do. As far as.
you have to keep in mind. Municipality, not an HOA. HOAs are governed by,
Yeah.
an agreement, mutual agreement.
And one reason HOAs or condominium associations work is because those bylaws are adopted before you purchase.
Right.
So you purchase one agreeing to those terms.
Right.
Not true.
Except to the extent that if you pass the ordinance that is in place and anything that's built or bought.
Yeah.
The legal challenge, Mr. Chairman, is that any ordinance. The legal standpoint, sir. Challenge is whether your house is painted green or yellow or blue, is that serving a public purpose? That's the challenge.
My intention is roof color versus house color. How can you do one and not the other? That'd probably be a leading question.
Well, already the roof color. Challenge.
That could be, again, to serve a public purpose.
And the public purpose, the original public purpose on that was primarily as far as metal roofs, that they not create glare. There is a public purpose.
The matte finish on the gates, and you can have a silver metal, but as long as it's matte, you're not gonna have that reflection.
Yeah, I understand.
So high gloss versus on the house.
Is this something kind of thing that y'all, the municipal, folks, the Georgia municipal, whatever, the planning folks?
As far as the comp plan you're thinking of? As far as-
Yeah, I mean, just, and it's back to, I was saying about the model solar ordinance. Don't they have, are they set up to give advice to municipalities? If you tell them what your concern is, then they can say, well, we think, or you are able legally to do such and such within these parameters, and here's where it's been done before, so forth.
To a certain extent, yes.
Yeah.
I will tell you. Exactly. I was, in March, I was down in Athens for 3 days at a GMA conference designed to teach new municipal council members how to be council members. And I brought this subject up of solar. He didn't have it.
That was a good idea, though, Jim.
Now, there are some things you can do as far as, trying to get them into the comp plan. That you kind of, and it gets back to some of what Jason was saying earlier, you create an ordinance, a comp plan or a zoning ordinance that automatically precludes people from doing things because they can't meet those criteria. If you have an example, if you had a commercial area and you can't tell somebody they can't have a restaurant, but you want to preclude fast food. You can't really do that, but you can create an ordinance that says, no, we can't have drive-throughs. And we can't have golden arches and that, by that kind of ordinance, you're gonna keep people from doing what you don't want to see happen.
It would just seem to me that if we start drafting solar ordinances regarding solar panels, building materials and paint colors and everything, we need to know legally. What we can do.
Or what we can.
Yeah, and that's not the time to find out. Or so that you draft it
Ideally,
so that you're consistent with, and you draft something that is enforceable. Going in is enforceable rather than.
Sure.
So that, I think we need at some point, some expert advice, legal advisory from the GMA or somebody, rather than drafting out. We can tell them what we want to do. I think we need to do that. They can tell us what.
and trust me, anything that we come up with, we always run past the attorney. And he makes suggestions as to how we might want to be able to correct what we're doing.
Dan, Jason and I, next week or the week after, have an intergovernmental meeting in Baker County, and we will be in proximity to the county manager and the commission chair. And we certainly can ask at that point if they come up with their plan, so we can present it to y'all, if that's what you'd like us to do.
Absolutely. All the input we can get. Maybe.
The University of Georgia had the political science department. And I don't remember the name of the institute that's within that group. We will serve as consultants to municipalities. Does anybody know the name of it?
You refer to Paul Vincent.
Yeah,
Carl Vincent Institute putting on the thing that I was at in March.
right, okay, would they be a resource for you? It's,
They weren't on the solar issue. Yeah, they cooperate, the Vincent Institute cooperates with the GMA, the Georgia Municipal Association.
It's really something we probably need to talk to you about. When I've had these conversations, they always say, this is general advice, but always consult with your senior county attorney.
And this issue we're on right now, I haven't talked to the kid about, I have a solar, and he hadn't been able to come up with the answers any better than I have. I think it's something we might be on our own.
I think, there may be law firms, so they play especially this area of law. It would be expensive, but it would be probably worth it if you're really serious enough to do anything. So, they would have, and this is a little bit of a specialized area, but there are, there's some firms that, sure,
I'm sure
this is what they do.
I'm sure they're.
They're dealing with municipal regulation. And regulation. And be much more efficient to go to them. Just in the city.
Okay. The reason these things come up with us today is because we were asked to look at it. All right, anything else on construction?
I mean, would it not be appropriate for the council to consider a moratorium? If it's something we're concerned about, moratorium, much like the county.
We can consider.
And you've got to define, it would seem to me, what an unconventional building here is specifically.
That's part of the road.
Well, I understand, but to get, so you'd have to define that, but again, that's gonna be a legal thing. But if that's what we're concerned about, then that's what y'all need to do, and that way the pressure would be off of us immediately to say, okay, well, let's cobble together an ordinance. You just prohibit it, and it must be allowed because the county is doing it, I believe. I don't know any of the details on that, but as a general proposition, it must be something that's within the power.
They're finding as to the length of the moratorium at this point legally, I think is where it is right.
Well, I'm not trying to get see in it. To me, that seems to me, if that's safe legal ground, that would be an easy way to stop it so that we're not concerned about it until we can get back and.
The only problem with that is you have to be concerned to a certain extent as to what you're going to include in the report.
Well, you got to define what you.
So,
Well,
And if we can't define it, then we got a problem.
Well, and as I indicated earlier, some of these new builds, and Dan mentioned appropriately that it's gonna happen. Somebody's gonna come to me with a set of plans and say, okay, I've got this, and this, and this. I don't know about it, I don't know. Well, they don't have anything on the books.
which is why we're looking at you.
that's why it's been heavily. Process is.
So. Does anybody here want to propose that we suggest to the city they implement a moratorium? And if so, how would you like to word it?
Well, I think it would be up to them, but certainly I'm making a motion to not. It's something y'all are concerned about, is the city concerned about. Seems to me that the city council could fairly easily fix it, stop it right now. And take guidance from the county, tell them what you did and their law, whatever.
County and where.
Yeah,
And
right.
then if we can go ahead and set up our next meeting of the,
We would do
we
that.
can report to you all of that. Appropriate.
As a councilman, I would think that we would look at the P and Z committee for the language.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's typically what happens.
Tell us what we're.
Yeah, we do need to move on this. This is not a put it on the back burner thing. I don't, that's why I started to get you all together, all the great brain trust here to get together and.
Jason or Jim, whatever, could y'all find from the county precisely what they do?
That's how they said
And we
that.
were
Get a copy.
just going out, doing a quick Google search, seems like that I sent you the mayor, Mr. Allred, interesting article talking about solar flare panels and a lot of it has to do not so much with the panels themselves, but with the material. Because obviously the intent is to absorb, not reflect. So anyway, I'm just kind of thinking through it, I'm not prepared enough to
Right.
discuss, but just from a keyword search, maybe we might want to look not so much at the orientation, but maybe the materials to reduce the glare. That might be the way we have to look at this.
Okay.
Because
Good point.
if the panel is reflecting, it's not really doing what it's intended to do. It needs to absorb the light, that activity to transfer to electricity. So anyway, just a thought.
Okay, good point.
Raise your hand if you're glad you're on the P and Z. It's being paid.
You get a free bottle of water.
No, it's that high pay of all these jobs that we've got here in the city. All right, we're gonna move on here. We have a comprehensive plan that's gonna be reviewed and reenacted for what, September, October?
It has October 31st.
October 30th. Probably the big issue that's gonna come up, and this has come up in some of the citizen surveys that have happened over the last several years, is what's gonna happen down in what I would consider the valley floor, the area around the lodge, so forth. It probably isn't gonna impact the single family districts so much as it will down there. And that's what's going to be allowed to be built there. A lot of the people on the surveys over the years, you know, going back to what Harold had come up with when he was here originally, he was gonna have a little book. Well received. A lot of people want to see some sort of services available, commercial services available, whether it be a coffee shop, you know, allow a doctor's office or a dentist, dental office, accounting office, maybe an outfitter who wants to put a little in that area. And what do we have to do as far as zoning and put in the comp plan to allow for something? I was at a meeting not too long ago, and not too long ago, somebody suggested that since the Piggly Wiggly is likely to be closing in Dillard, then we might want to allow that to be up here. That's not going to happen, because if they can't survive in Dillard, they're not going to survive here. But we need to address these issues to how much commercial is going to be allowed, what is going to be allowed, and so forth. The bulk of that area right now is zoned what's called mixed residential. And our zoning ordinance currently addresses what can be done in mixed residential. Maximum height, density. Density is 18 units per acre, but not to exceed on the average of 10 units per acre. To my mind, this needs to be somewhat more flexible.
It's up there, Dan, if you want. Y'all can see it. Thank you.
And the area we are talking about is, let's see if I can see it on my own map here. You see there's a big orange section there, which is MR, yeah. It's the right pages.
But it's resort commercial, anything.
Well, part of it is resort commercial. The what I would call kind of a mauve color is kind of a wishbone shaped thing in there. That's resort commercial. The orange is mixed residential.
See that little arrow thing?
Somebody, where that here?
Yeah, right here.
That wishbone shaped long painted section in there is basically the launch.
See what happens,
Okay,
we're in the blue strip. You put
orange surrounding the pink is mixed residential. In mixed residential, purpose and intent is to provide for a range of low to medium density residential development transitioning from single family to higher density resort core. These districts are to be located in transitional areas. We see where it's currently located. Permitted and conditional uses are as shown on table 2, which get to table 2. Accessory uses and structures not listed in this table, okay. Active recreational facilities, tennis courts, swimming pools, etc. are permitted. Agricultural is not. No apartment buildings. The bed and breakfast could be given a conditional permit. No cemeteries, churches, temples, synagogues, conditional permit. Commercial, recreational, indoor, I think bowling alley or something like that, it's conditional. Commercial recreational facility outdoors, not permitted. Conference center, not permitted. Conservation area, permitted. Country club, conditional. Going on, single family dwellings, detached, conditional. Single family dwelling townhouses, permitted. Duplexes, permitted. Condos, permitted. What we don't get into in there is a lot of municipal offices not permitted, other offices not permitted. Rental dwelling in restaurants not permitted, retail trade establishments not permitted. So that kind of lets out some of the service businesses that we might want to see in Skyvalley.
Does it say municipal office?
Municipal offices, city hall, and city services are not permitted in that zoning district.
That would be erroneous. Simply cities.
I'm just reading it. It's there.
It needs to be updated.
I don't think we want to put city offices there anyway. But the point is that there's very little flexibility in what can be done there. The wishbone thing, pink thing there is commercial recreational or resort commercial. You get more flexibility there. But what I personally would see happening down there is some sort of use. A mixed use as opposed to mixed residential. You might get, think a downtown area where you might have office space or retail space down below. Something of that nature. And again, have not heavy, not dense commercial, but something that would service people and stuff. Like a coffee shop or something. You're not trying to put in anything that might be attracting people to the public from outside of Scott. Merrill, for example, originally wanted to put a ski resort in. The whole purpose of the ski resort would be to bring people in from outside. We don't infrastructure to support that. But some kind of, some kind of service business that would help the people of Skyview.
Jason, do we know if we have to have state approval if we change our zoning districts, or do we have control?
We have, yeah. What we do need to look at, sharing this on comp plan, is our character. You know, that page, but that is where we get ourselves in trouble. We keep ourselves from getting in trouble. Is that we need to really look, as we're talking about updating comp plan, because character areas, if we need to show that we anticipate it going mixed use. Doesn't say that, then we kind of contradict ourselves. Typically that map, I was trying to pull up on my phone, but that map should be,
Plus, if it's not in the comp plan, we can't apply for grants and funding.
Right.
From what I understand.
Well, and this is why we're addressing this now. Determine what it is we want to see happen and get it into the.
Did Merrill have any revised ideas as to suggestions as to what needs to be done there?
We're waiting.
There, he's been working with a couple of developers as to
That's what I thought.
coming up with ideas. They haven't
Come up with anything.
anything up. But whether it's Merrill or anyone else, we've got to address what we want to see happen.
Yeah, regardless of the developer.
Now, I've given you my ideas.
Y'all know this meeting is to go until tomorrow.
You're bringing in lunch.
I thought that was your job. Go pick it up.
up a little bit, please. Down, I'm sorry, thank you.
The other,
The other,
your other left.
thank you, Bill. It's around page 63, 64. The next one should be us.
There we are.
That is our future land use map or character.
What does that mean?
Well, the legend is not showing. The,
And that ideally should tie in with our zoning.
Where we can find it.
it's online.
Thank you.
Business.
Could you look at your comp plan and the city records, or the building records?
I think it's under the drop down menu for government, and
It's under business. And where else do we get it?
the zoning ordinances are under government. So yeah, what Jason's saying is, whatever we decide we want to see happen, we need to get it into the comp.
Right now. This, well, some of this is golf course. But what we're talking about this center area here. Future land use plan, it's anticipated to be park recreation and conservation. But the village residential and the village commercial, which is these colors up here. That are up kind of near the club, they would probably want this to be more commercial, mixed use village. So that would need to be updated, because right now, if we were to do something that approves mixed use concept, we would be inconsistent with our comp plan, because it's paid to be, it's anticipated to be conservation.
Well, but now with the new comp plan.
So that's.
Jason, for perspective, can you show me where the pickleball courts are on there? Just.
Golf course, right. Here, post office is right here's overlook. Here's what we call Condo Hill. This area right in here, the pickleball course about right here. And, yes. Where the
And that is-
chair has the mouse. I'm next to the chair. I don't know if you can zoom in on that one more or not. Here's Overlook, here's Ridgepoe, Hill Lodge is right here. So here's Ridgepoe, as you make the hard turn, it's level, it's going right here. Here's Tahoe, here's the timeshare facility, here's Driver.
So that area is designated as what, Jason? It was.
This area right here, where the look is at,
Was it village commercial or?
but this area back here. That ties into some of the other property that Mayor owns. It's anticipated to be conservation. Obviously, that would be a developable area.
Jason, do we have a percentage of our total city, area that has to be designated for conservation, like developments all have a percentage?
You have percentages, we, nothing as far as a whole, it just applies to each individual lot. Example, on mixed use or multifamily, you can have a maximum of 18 units. So you might have areas that you put really good dirt, put 18, but the total would be 10, so if you have 10 acres, you know, maximum of 100 units, but that. Space.
And the issue we have with conservation, proposed conservation, is that we don't own it. And most of it is, as Jason was saying, is a lot of that developed properties tied up in various.
Well, right now.
Right. All right, I've kind of expressed my opinions, but I haven't heard from anyone else here.
Here on the legend, what is the green area?
Golf course. I think that's
Some of it's gone for, close to expanded beyond the golf. Obviously, the field. But it's been made part of it.
You know,
All that green conservation,
a good part of that is the old ski slope.
but is that a designated conservation?
Might be,
No, it's definitely not on there.
no.
But according to the 19 comp plan, this was adopted. This was, the anticipation was that it would remain. So it's really kind of inconsistent with the plan, so now is the time to fix it.
be practiced.
So obviously, we're looking to update,
What, 05?
Yeah.
this would not have been, it's never been brought up, it's gonna be moved forward, which is just, you know, next 5 years. Yeah, it is, we are at a good time to address that and try to determine future land use standpoint, what would be the best use for the developer as well as the city.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Sure.
No, you cannot.
Just based on what you guys have seen, we have edited commercial development. Normally when there's a need, somebody will fill that. Yeah. What is there an impediment other than just the seasonality of our population that
prevents that? You seen any other impediment that could cause people not to come here to start a small business? The lack of sewer is one thing. Typically, they would say retail follows rooftop. We do have, may not have the critical mass yet. Potential to bring those parts. But certainly, if we introduce sewer. Spur that development. Then we know that's gonna come sit behind it. Hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, you look at even stated by the post office, you got all the businesses, right? Businesses, you know, there's somebody's looking for a place to have. They, oh, we don't have that. You know, and we
Scaly at least have.
they do.
You know, we're not likely to ever have, unless we put a business
Yeah,
there.
no, we're not likely to want that.
No, no, you know, something that might service the residents of Scott.
Yeah.
As opposed to bringing people into Scott.
Right.
You know, not looking for day trippers.
But we do have. Where is our, I know. This man. Now, what is that it is? If I want to put a shop next door to City Hall,
Sharon, if you can drag the map.
Kind of the upper left there.
It's zoomed out, drag it over.
I showed it to you earlier.
oh, I feel the rest of it.
It's shown as village commercial. The little, if you see the little swath of paint that. The anticipation would be that. The commercial would. In fact, if you look at the top left. The pink blob right there is part of that. Yes.
I can't read. Is village commercial kind of like regular commercial, but it's scaled down, so you can't put in nasty stuff like that.
It should be,
They're the disadvantage, we don't have.
it should be a description of each character.
The village commercial exists in the character map. Doesn't exist in our zoning map.
Oh. Or. Anyways, yeah.
Well, and that's why we're here, is because things like that aren't consistent.
This map is.
We have what's called commercial municipal district. And in commercial municipal district, there's a lot of things that aren't allowed, but
I'll pull it up when I get home and read it. I've worked for Victor Valley for over 35 years. Doing commercial appraisals, and it's important, very important. What is allowed in a commercial district, be very clear. Because otherwise. And you need to know what you're going to allow in that, and maybe it does, but I can't see it. But what you allow in that commercial district, whatever you call it, you need to have a list of things and they're readily available, for you to.
and there is. Municipal offices, public and semi-public use, recycle center is allowed. Restaurants, including outside seating,
Is it allowed or not allowed?
allowed.
Um,
Retail trade establishments not exceeding 2,500 square feet. Retail trade establishments enclosed exceeding 2,500 feet. Both are permitted. Warehouses and storage buildings permitted.
So that would be a whole thing if we had somebody come and build.
Well, but then, you know, those things are permitted, but then you're limited by the size of the lot. Because you're still gonna deal with setbacks and so forth. Buffer zones and what have you, so, you know, all that buying is what determines. So we don't have a lot here. It's
Well,
big
you're
enough.
gonna have structures that you also need to have all the,
Well, yet again, we just don't have the space for something like that, so that in its own right is to keep people doing something. There's less space than you think.
I
But,
don't know, I just have a lot of.
okay. And
You'd be surprised.
again, you've got setbacks, and you've got. Where we back up to here, back up to residential property, then there's a certain buffer space that's gotta be put in, and that does limit things. Anyway, that being said, that's why we're looking at all this, to determine what we want to allow where. And to make sure that we get it into the comp plan.
So this is dates from 2005.
The comp plan has to be reviewed every 5. So it's.
So it's not been changed since, we've been through 5-year cycles.
We've been through a 5-year cycle and that. You were just coming in at the tail end of it or at the beginning of? You were at the tail end. But,
It wasn't even looked at, but in the last 5 years.
Well, it must have been looked at. It's not been changed. It's been changed in 20
it's been a while. The comp plan is done county. There are sections within the comp. Each municipality.
So they go with whatever the municipality.
And this, you know, what the municipality wants. Is driven. That's like, to a certain extent, it's still gotta. Be consistent with what the county.
What's changed in the last 20 years? It's fundamentally changed the last 20 years that we've made this awesome. Just ask,
Ski resorts gone.
sit here 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It was.
But isn't the question more of what do we want to see change for the upcoming plan?
You know, okay, so how's the city's wishes changed? How have city's wishes changed? What do we want now? It's different from 20 years ago. That was good 20 years ago.
Yeah, well, the multiple family units, was that something that's a possibility?
Multifamily condominium kind of thing is certainly a possibility. Some people wanted to see some sort of ACLF. Congregate living facility of some kind. That was discussed for a period of time and
This current council came into being, we did a really good time survey as to how do we want to keep our city beautiful, have our resources stay the same, but what else would we like to see? And in this survey, we had a lot of people say they would like to see some sort of small town center that had some service. They would like to see some high-end condos for people to move from their large current residences as they age to a smaller condo that was well appointed with garages. So there were real specific wants and needs that people looked at. We also know that Harrison Merrill owns 600 something acres. It's got out and is very interested in fulfilling, making it financially wonderful for him as well as for us. So it's all a lot of moving parts. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And we also said that we didn't think, he wanted to do a skiing venue again, and we said this was not feasible. We don't have the infrastructure, plus have snow. Anyway, so the garbage, the parking, the noise, the electricity, the water, anyway, so we nixed the snow ski, but then, so we had to come up with what do we want to do instead? And so we're working with them. They have a professional planning group and a financial group that are looking at all the feasibility of what to present to us, to the city, as to what they'd like. That's what's in process. Which means we have to look at this, of course.
Yeah.
Also, we have the sewer issue that we've had going on for over 20 years. Our septic systems are starting to fail in some areas. And if we want continued growth, we have to have a sewer system. We have some major grants. Big dollars. Also, but it all, it's all moving parts that have to be fit together. So
How many 20+ acres are there? There's some there in Scottsdale that would be available for you. So we don't have it. All family involved, we don't.
Spring Road, the new road. So, as you get down towards Crooked Run, there are several 8, 10, 12. I know some of those are set. There's an area that we know that potential for new growth.
We don't get to be that, I would just. But up here, we would want 20 acres for any kind of smaller house development, within the 11. Or patio homes and that sort of thing, because you don't want them.
You have the 1 acre minimum lots.
Well, for
But
single
if we
family,
have a bigger area, if you bought 25 acres and wanted to do a PUD on like 25 acres, that you need more than 8 acres. Or
well, most, a lot of like the Evergreen Park, that's all single family zoned. Some of the core areas around the lodge are where any multifamily or mixed use would go. Most of it, and, whether it's Merrill or anybody else, we've still got to address
but basically the only place
it.
somebody could come and want to do that.
Jason, who owns the 22 acres down by the covered bridge? No,
Oh, you mean the cover?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a private. Conglomerate.
It's something LLC. Your state, I don't know who the managing partner is.
Yes, Harrison Merrill does own property on 246.
yes, yes.
Is there an estimated or target date for Merrill's group to get back to the city and let you know what their leanings are?
So they've already passed their own target date.
Yes. We have.
That's, yeah.
If we left it like it is, what the repercussions of that, Jason, you're saying that
If I'm reading the definitions, the definition of that conservation is no new development. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that the city cannot rezone that property to commercial. However, if we leave this future land use map the way that it is, and then we were to be presented with a master plan in that area, we think the city approved that. If there were folks that didn't want it,
Then they can
the
say-
case is raised that you're inconsistent. So, we do know that some of that area there that's green, it might be more appropriate to be village commercial or village residential. So, it's just, again, that's why we're having these conversations and why we're amending it now. You know, obviously, 5 years ago, wasn't any houses, I've been here almost 3.5 years. My understanding, 5 years ago, what house being built, we're averaging almost one new house a month being built. So there's been a lot of change since 2019. Joe, you know, when I got here in early 21, February, it was slow. February 2 wasn't slow. February, you know, sometimes now, it's just, folks are here and it's not slowing down. And again, the mayor said the sewer project slowly coming in fruition. Obviously, you introduce sewer, that's gonna introduce higher density development. And, the areas that we're looking at is that town center that serve that. So obviously, that's just gonna either further support that area needs to be, we may wanna, we need to revisit, anticipate that area to grow right now. You do have a large swath of that screen, it may need to be more of that peak or the peach color.
Where is timeshare and what is it?
Well, that's like the service zone.
Wondering on the voting map. Is that what I guess it would be with the new clubhouse?
It's residential, I think.
It's. Yeah,
Yeah, some of that.
yeah, that's right. It's largely mixed
Mixed
residential.
residential. So it's not even commercial. Even though it is, okay.
Unclear about how much, where they can, I guess I can look at it on a big piece of green there, short piece of, how far up, say, knob, right? Because I mean, you get into, once you leave right around the old lot. Trying to think, I mean.
No, I was in the orange.
Okay.
I had like.
So here's the post office, here's Overlook. Compactor is right here. Overlook continues with Knob, this is Knob. Yes, this is Knob right here. And the chapel is right here.
And that land is up there behind it that somebody told me years ago, they want, might put another 9 hole.
Mhm. Well, there is the 9 holes is in the orange. There is a really nice piece of property above the chapel. Harrison does it.
Is that the hill?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Cannon Hill. Cannon Hill.
Hills.
Yes.
Yeah, the little field area is you behind the post office, that's that.
What's that little pink piece that's there? In the. Right inside. Even. Wedged in there,
It's kind of a left.
like a lot between the green and the.
Right here?
Yeah.
Over to the right. There you
So that,
That's the clubhouse, I mean, I see the golf club next to it.
So the question is, how much of that green would we tend to want to make pink or salmon?
No, the maintenance bill.
Yeah, most of that green is. Yeah. It is almost all the green.
So.
Clubhouse is right here.
I'm dense, I just don't understand what we were talking about, what the duty to make some of that green into some other.
You know,
I think it's the orange, the orange
the
and the
orange,
pink
yeah.
areas there that are the greatest.
That we need to make sure, okay.
you know, in Harrison's original plan, I think he had about probably 30 acres of that orange designated as a village center.
And, you know, his
that
plan was
needs
well
to be
received when
multi-
he came up. when he
Yeah.
came up. And surveys since then have wanted to see some sort of a.
We might have to start.
Probably.
So, but, all right, so the pink and the mixed residential and resort commercial, so they're already. I'm missing, trying to understand.
You know, the top half of that orange is probably 30 to 35 acres. And that's really where the best mixed use property exists in Sky Valley.
Around that horseshoe area.
So they're calling their core.
So
That-
we gotta go back to this other map then, just what needs to be changed here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, some, probably just from this area right in here, that's anticipated, which we would call the town center. You were identified the park recreational non-developed land. Maybe we might want to look at making some of that village commercial, village residential.
Zoning map have to conform to your comprehensive.
Sure, it certainly should.
It does.
And President does. But we've still, you know, even with the zoning map, we've still got to address how it's actually going to be zoned. Yeah, they should, the whole purpose of doing this, is so we start getting some.
Both of those, the maps don't correlate to each other.
Comprehensive plan, with just a few tweaks.
It could be,
Big.
it could be.
Except that mixed residential, where it's currently mixed residential, it needs to be more mixed use or town center or something.
Whatever.
Something that allows more flexibility than what this does.
I don't know if we have a copy of the 2014 comp plan, it would be interesting to see what that map looked like. Not if these lands.
The comprehensive map said it hasn't changed.
It's not dated.
And it would not necessarily change because GMRC is only going to do what the cities or the citizens that are surveying and
So I'm guessing y'all need back to make some changes and then because before, obviously, those.
Yeah.
Things.
Just keep in mind, having resources used in this area.
so just, well, you probably just have a conversation now. I mean, that would be the best, I don't know, I think the best course back, just be to have a lot of conversation about what we have found to be inconsistencies with our future land use map, our current zoning and what we want to do. That's what he's asking. Steve. And I can certainly reach out to him. I don't know if that looks like having another meeting or.
In the budget where we could, if we wanted to, and then if they will. BMRC help us with the zoning conundrum.
There is the money that. The GMRC or some other kind of consultant. You're gonna get the best bang for buck from GMRC. $2,000.
And is they're rather slow, but they do do a good job.
But he would know.
Regional Commission, which is a state.
It's kind of a quasi. Kind of a mini area. The state and the local.
Could they come and advise P and Z? We have some sort of advisory,
I'm sure, I can ask.
be interested in that, Mr.
By all
Chairman?
means.
So ultimately, our task is on here would be to actually draw the line. Draw the lines or what it
Yeah, to recommend to the council. And for the council.
would be helpful. I simple mind to see an overlay of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking.
That may be correct. I understand.
I think we could-
And make it concrete precisely what we're. You're getting this house, you know? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No, can't make the transfer. I'm not.
You know,
You got to do that. Going further.
well, one of the things that. This may be something maybe Brian can do. If I send you this. Sharing, it's right now, but,
I agree with Jim, but yeah, let's,
well.
I will just point out that this zoning map. Probably that one too, but this one was actually produced by GMers.
well, but yes, they do magic for us.
So
If
if anybody can make it more transparent, of course, they would be the one.
Well, you'll check your email real quick, Chair.
We also get, at our water.
Well, what I could ask, and she'll probably charge us to do that, I could ask Faith to,
To do the overlay,
she'll just refresh. Hopefully it went through. That way, click on, yeah, click on that.
what,
And then click on, there should be a. It's like,
I don't see a link. To make sure you included any attachment.
well, I mean, it's kind of. Email.
Gemini water system.
Yeah. Click on that. This is our GIS system right here. That goes down to the parcel level. And one of the things that GMRC did was they overlaid our zoning onto that, just go with most the next, maybe down one more. What we could have then, what I could ask her to do is the 19 future land use map on this. So there's our zone. So that takes it down to the parcel level. What I can ask her to do is.
you said that's our zoning?
That is, that what they did was,
Yeah, that's helpful right there. You got.
Yeah.
Parcel.
so that should be, if you go down maybe one more, there's about 5 sections. That should be the zoning. No, down one, we just. So what I'm saying is that to create another overlay that would show the 2019 future land use. Then you can sit there.
Yes.
and you can, I could ask you to do it where you can have layers, and you can have. Because that takes it to the parcel levels. I can ask you to do that.
We'd like to see that.
One of our councilmen, when we came into office. That one of our motto should be, we're kicking the can down the road. And unfortunately, you all are the recipients.
Okay.
Yeah,
You just kick the can here.
Yeah, we. In many areas.
All right. Obviously, we're not gonna achieve anything here today beyond thinking about this.
Yeah.
Can we come up with a time and date for another meeting? Get my calendar out here. Is June 25th. Would be the fourth Tuesday of June. Good with everybody.
Tuesday.
Mhm. Good to the mind.
10 o'clock. Oh, that's back on court day.
Oh, okay. Our date's not good.
Well, maybe we could do it later in the day.
Or
Or do it at.
Wednesday, the 26th.
Or do it 20 to 1 o'clock if y'all wanna
I
do that.
lost my pen. Is that my pen?
This might be yours.
I'm stolen.
That one didn't work out. This is mine.
So,
Now,
like,
Wednesday doesn't work for you?
The 25th, would that be okay?
Well, if we did it later and avoided court, I guess.
Yeah.
We can get into lunch either, you know.
Yeah. Or Jake.
All I'm saying.
The beat job.
25th at 1 p.m.
Sounds good.
You okay with it?
Yeah.
so let me put it on the calendar.
Okay,
By that time, maybe we will have all the other stuff that we.
well, that's the goal here. We've got only a month to gather up all this other information. All right, anybody else have anything else?
No resignations will be accepted.
Tony, would you like to do the honors?
It would be my pleasure, Mr. Being no further business for the committee, I suggest that
Second.
Is there a second? All in favor? I just put that on my printer and glued it up.